He handcuffed a black mother in front of her children, convinced she was a criminal. But seconds later, she reached for something that made him freeze, and the whole street fell silent. It was one of those golden afternoons when the sun painted everything in soft amber. The sidewalks, the rooftops, even the tired faces of people heading home. The neighborhood felt peaceful, wrapped in the lazy hum of summer. Children's laughter drifted through the air like music, bouncing off fences and car windows. But inside her old blue sedan, Marcia Daniels felt only exhaustion. Her hospital scrub still carried the faint scent of antiseptic and long hours. She'd just finished a 12-hour shift tending to patients who called her Angel one moment and Nurse the next. All she wanted now was a quiet evening, a simple meal with her children, and maybe a moment to rest her aching feet. She turned into the small grocery store parking lot, humming softly to herself, already thinking of what her kids might want for dinner. Then, the calm broke. Red and blue lights flickered across her windshield, slicing through the warm sunlight. Her heart gave a small, startled jump. The siren's echo wasn't loud, but it carried weight, the kind that crushed the air inside her chest. Marcia froze. She hadn't done anything wrong. Yet somehow she already knew this afternoon was about to change everything. The officer's boots struck the pavement with heavy, deliberate steps. Officer Bradley Cole, young, sharp-jawed, and tense with authority, rested one hand on his holster as he neared Marcia's window. The afternoon light glinted off his sunglasses, hiding his eyes but not the suspicion that radiated from him. "Ma'am," he said curtly, "step out of the vehicle. You match the description of a car theft suspect." For a moment, Marcia thought she'd misheard him. Her heartbeat fluttered like a trapped bird. The car was hers. The registration sat neatly in the glove compartment. Yet his tone left no room for reason. She tried to keep her voice even. "Officer, I'm a nurse. I just finished my shift. There must be a mistake." But her calmness only seemed to irritate him. Without another word, he pulled open her door, motioning her out. People began to slow their steps, watching. Phones were raised. A few whispered. Her two children pressed their faces against the car window, eyes wide and wet with fear. And before she could speak again, the cold metal of the handcuffs clicked around her wrists. The sound echoed louder than the siren. In that instant, beneath the weight of hundreds of unseen eyes, humiliation replaced fear, and disbelief hollowed her chest. Across the street, the world seemed to hold its breath. Cars rolled by slower than usual, the rhythm of the day broken by the sight of a black woman in hospital scrubs standing in handcuffs. Among the small crowd gathering near the sidewalk, one woman stood apart, plain clothes, dark blazer, hair neatly tied back. She didn't lift her phone or whisper to anyone. She simply watched. Her eyes followed every motion, the officer's posture, the trembling in Marcia's hands, the way her children clung to the backseat window. There was something unsettling about her stillness. It wasn't indifference. It was control, the quiet kind that carried authority. Meanwhile, Officer Cole's voice cut sharply through the air. "Don't lie to me, ma'am. You said you're a nurse? Then where's your hospital ID?" Marcia stammered, her voice cracking as she tried to explain. But he wasn't listening. He was accusing. The woman across the street sighed softly, almost imperceptibly, and began to walk forward. Her footsteps were calm, measured, deliberate. When she finally reached the scene, her voice was low, steady, and absolute. "Officer Cole, that's enough," he froze. For a split second, the crowd went silent. No one knew who she was, but everyone could feel that she mattered. Officer Cole's jaw tightened as he turned toward the woman, irritation flashing in his eyes. "Ma'am, please step back," he barked, his voice sharp with authority he didn't quite own. "This is police business." But the woman didn't flinch. She moved with quiet precision, her gaze unwavering. With one calm motion, she slipped her hand inside her blazer and drew out something that caught the sunlight. A gold badge. The color drained from Cole's face. "Yes," she said, her tone firm and commanding, "and I'm your superior." The words struck like a bolt through the tense afternoon. The crowd murmured, unsure of what they had just witnessed. Cole's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His hand, still near his holster, trembled slightly before falling to his side. The woman, Captain Naomi Reynolds, stepped closer, her voice low but filled with steel. "I'm from Internal Affairs," she continued. "I've been observing field behavior after recent complaints of racial profiling." She glanced toward Marcia, who stood frozen, tears tracing silent paths down her cheeks. "I've seen enough," Captain Reynolds said. The world seemed to tilt in that moment. Power shifted. Justice found its footing, and the very air felt different. The hunter had just become the hunted. "Release her," Captain Reynolds ordered, her tone calm but cutting through the air like glass. Officer Cole hesitated, his pride wrestling with fear. Then, under the weight of her stare, he reached for the handcuff key. The metal clicked open, echoing louder than before, this time a sound of freedom. Marcia rubbed her wrists, red marks forming where the cuffs had bitten into her skin. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. The silence of her dignity said everything. Around them, the crowd began to murmur, not with fear now, but with awe. Cole stammered, words tumbling out in broken fragments. I thought she matched the description." Captain Reynolds raised a hand, stopping him cold. Her voice dropped to a quiet authority that left no room for argument. "Hand me your badge." The color drained from his face. His hand shook as he unclipped it, the weight of the emblem suddenly too heavy to hold. She took it, her gaze unflinching. "You don't protect the law by humiliating the innocent, officer." The words hung in the air like a verdict. In that moment, justice wasn't loud or vengeful. It was silent, measured, and deeply human. The next afternoon, the police precinct felt unusually quiet. Reporters waited outside, their cameras lowered, as if the building itself carried the weight of shame. Inside, in a modest conference room, Marcia Daniels sat at the long oak table, not in cuffs this time, but in honor. Captain Reynolds stood beside her, the same calm authority in her posture, but her voice now carried something different. Remorse. She spoke publicly, her words echoing through the room. "On behalf of the department," she said, "I offer our apology to Ms. Daniels for what should never have happened." Every officer in attendance lowered their gaze. Some shifted uncomfortably, others clenched their jaws, wrestling with what the moment represented. Marcia looked around, her eyes soft yet steady. She didn't gloat. She didn't demand more. She simply took a breath and said, "Teach your men to see people before they see color." Her voice wasn't angry. It was calm, certain, and impossibly strong. The room fell silent. Even the air seemed to pause, as if her words had carved a mark that could not be erased. In that stillness, dignity spoke louder than power, and grace became the truest form of justice. The afternoon sun streamed through the precinct windows, washing the room in a golden light that softened everything it touched, even the hard lines of uniforms and the cold shine of badges. Outside, the world moved on, unaware that inside this small space, something important had quietly shifted. Marcia stood near the window, her reflection faint against the glass. The light caught the edge of her face, tired, but peaceful now. In that still moment, she wasn't just a nurse or a victim. She was a reminder of what courage looks like when it doesn't need to shout. Captain Reynolds watched her from across the room, her own expression thoughtful. She knew that real justice didn't always roar in courtrooms or make headlines. Sometimes it lived in quiet acts, in apologies spoken sincerely, in lessons that changed hearts rather than headlines. The narrator's voice softened, almost like a whisper carried by the sunlight. Sometimes, justice doesn't come from shouting or fighting. It comes from those who carry both power and empathy, and use them to remind the world what humanity looks like. As the screen faded to warm gold, one truth lingered. Dignity shines brightest after the darkness has passed. Real authority is not about control. It's about compassion. Justice means protecting the innocent, even when no one is watching.